The morning alarm screamed through the metal corridors of Nexus Prime Academy. Lee Tae-jin opened his eyes and sat up in his narrow bunk. Around him, dozens of other cadets were doing the same thing. Some moved fast. Others groaned and rolled. Tae-jin swung his legs over the side of his bed. His bare feet touched the cold metal floor. He had been at the academy for 6 months now, but he still felt the strange lightness in his body. The station's artificial gravity was only half of what he grew up with on Earth. "Another beautiful day in paradise," said Park Ji-woo from the bunk below. Ji-woo was Ta-jin's roommate and best friend. They had traveled from Earth together on the same transport ship. "Could be worse," Tae-jin replied quietly. He pulled on his gray cadet uniform. The fabric felt thin compared to the clothes back home. Across the dormitory, alien cadets were getting ready too. The Centauri moved like giant insects. They're 6. Limbs working in perfect coordination. The Corvin floated a few inches off the ground, their bodies glowing with soft blue light. The Vorthik stomped around on heavy feet, their forearms swinging as they dressed. Most species kept to their own kind. Humans stuck together too, but not by choice. The other species made it clear that humans were not welcome in their groups. "Look at the little pink things," said a Vorthik cadet named Krog. His voice was deep and rough, like grinding stone. Still playing dress-up in their cute little uniforms. His friends laughed. Tae-jin kept his face blank and continued getting dressed. Ji-woo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They had learned to ignore the comments Kim Sora appeared at their bunks. She was the only female human in their dormitory section. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. "Formation in 5 minutes," she said. "Commander Nixao is doing inspection today." Tae-jin nodded. Commander Nixao was a Vorthik officer who seemed to enjoy making human cadets suffer. He found fault with everything they did. Their uniforms were never clean enough. Their bunks were never made properly. Their posture was always wrong. The 3 humans walked to breakfast together. The cafeteria was huge, with tables arranged. By species, humans sat at 3 tables near the back corner. It was not an official rule, but it was how things worked. The food dispensers gave each species meals suited to their biology. Humans got something that looked like gray paste with synthetic vitamins. It tasted like cardboard, but it kept them alive. "I miss real food," Ji-woo said, poking at his meal. "I miss a lot of things," Sora replied. Tae-jin ate in silence. He watched the other species at their tables. The Vorthik laughed loudly and hit each other on the shoulders. The Centauri clicked and whistled in their strange language. The Corvin barely ate at all, absorbing energy directly from the station's power grid. "Hey, humans," called a voice from across the room. It was Krog again, standing at the Vorthik table. "How does it feel to eat baby food?" More laughter from his table. Some cadets from other species turned to watch. Tae-jin took another bite of his paste and said nothing. "Maybe they need bottles too," said another Vorthik. "Little baby humans with their little baby bottles." Ji-woo's hand tightened around his spoon. Sora put a warning hand on his arm. "Not worth it," she whispered Dot. After breakfast came physical training. This was where the differences between species became most obvious. The Vorthik were naturally strong and tough. Their thick skin could stop small weapons. The Centauri were incredibly fast and flexible. The Corvin could fly. Humans looked weak by comparison. They were smaller than most species. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. They could not fly or move at super speed. They tired quickly in the Academy's light. Gravity, because their bodies were used to working much harder. "Pathetic," said Instructor Vexter, as he watched human cadets struggle through an obstacle course. Vexter was a Vorthik, like most of the Academy's senior staff. He stood almost 8 feet tall with gray skin, like armor plating. Your species should have stayed on your little dirt planet. The human cadets kept running. They finished the course, but they were always last. Other species finished in half the time. During tactical training, things were different. Humans studied the lessons carefully. They asked questions. They worked together to solve problems. While other species relied on their natural abilities, humans had to think their way through challenges. Interesting approach, said instructor Yolmoth, a Centauri who taught strategy. She was one of the few instructors who treated humans fairly. The human cadets show good analytical thinking, but most instructors were not like Yalmoth. They saw human efforts to think and plan as signs of weakness. Strong species did not need clever tactics. They won through superior biology. Stop overthinking everything, Commander Nixal would say during combat drills. Just fight. Use your instincts. But human instincts had been trained out of them over thousands of years of civilization. They had learned to think before acting, to control their emotions, to solve problems with their minds instead of their bodies. In the evenings, human cadets gathered in their corner of the dormitory. They shared stories from home and helped each other with difficult lessons. Earth felt very far away. My sister sent me a message, Jiwoo said one night. She says people back home are proud of us for making it this far. How many humans have graduated from the academy? Sora asked. 17, Taejin said. In 50 years of human participation, the number was not encouraging. Thousands of humans had tried to join the Galactic Coalition military. Most washed out in the first few months. The training was designed for species much stronger and tougher than humans. Maybe we are not meant for this, Jiwoo said quietly. Maybe, Taejin replied, but we are here anyway. Late at night, when the other cadets were sleeping, Taejin would lie in his bunk and think about home. He remembered the weight of Earth's gravity pressing down on him. He remembered the thick air that burned his lungs during training runs. He remembered the instructors who pushed human recruits until they broke. Earth's military training had been brutal, but it had prepared him for something. He was not sure what yet, but he could feel it waiting inside him like a coiled spring. The Academy wanted to break him. It wanted to prove that humans were too weak for the galaxy's military forces. Every day brought new challenges designed to make him quit. But Taejin had grown up on a world where everything tried to kill you, where the air itself was poison to most alien species, where gravity crushed visitors from other planets. He was not going to break. Not here. Not ever. The alarm would sound again tomorrow morning. There would be more insults, more impossible challenges, more proof that humans did not belong among the stars. Taejin would get up anyway. He would put on his uniform and face another day, because that was what humans did. They endured, they adapted, they survived, even when the whole galaxy was against them. The inspection alarm came without warning. Taejin was cleaning his weapon when the sharp sound cut through the dormitory. All around him, cadets jumped to attention. Inspection formation now, shouted Commander Nixal as he entered the room. Behind him walked General Vextar, the Academy's senior Vorthic officer. Vextar was bigger than the other Vorthic, with darker skin and more scars. His forearms moved independently as he surveyed the room. Cadets scrambled to form neat rows at the foot of their bunks. Taejin stood straight with his hands at his sides. Jiwoo was next to him, trying to look invisible. So Ra stood 3 positions down, her face carefully blank. General Vextar walked slowly down the rows. He stopped at random cadets and found things to criticize. A Centauri's antennae were not properly groomed. A Corvin's uniform had a tiny wrinkle. Each time, the cadet was ordered to do push-ups or run laps. When Vextar reached the human section, his pace slowed. His 4 eyes focused on each human cadet like a predator studying prey. "The humans," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "The Academy's special charity cases." Some of the alien cadets snickered. T-Jin kept his eyes forward and said nothing. X-Star stopped in front of Ji Woo. "You, what planet are you from?" "Earth, sir," Ji Woo replied. "Earth," X-Star repeated, making the word sound dirty. "A backwards little world at the edge of civilized space. Tell me, cadet, what makes you think you belong here with real warriors?" Ji Woo's face went red, but he kept his voice steady. "I passed the entrance exam, sir." "Barely," X-Star said. He leaned down until his face was inches from Ji Woo's. "Your species has been part of the coalition for 50 years. 50 years, and you have produced only 17 graduates from this academy. Do you know what that tells me?" "No, sir." "It tells me that humans are weak, soft, unsuited for military service." Vextar straightened up and addressed the entire room. "Humans evolved on a world with no real predators, no real challenges. They lived in caves and ate plants while real species conquered the stars." Tae-Jin felt something stir in his chest. It was a familiar feeling, one he had learned to control long ago. He breathed slowly and kept it buried. Vextar moved to Sorey. "And what about you, female? Why are you here?" "To serve the coalition, sir," Sorey said. "To serve?" Vextar laughed. "How noble, how pathetic. Your people cannot even fight there. Own wars properly. Your planet's history is nothing but thousands of years of killing each other with primitive weapons." The stirring in Tae-Jin's chest grew stronger. His hands remained at his sides, but his fingers twitched slightly. Vextar stepped in front of Tae-Jin. The general was huge, towering over the human cadet by almost 3 feet. His breath smelled like sulfur and nettle. "And you," Vextar said, "the quiet one. You think you are smart, do you not? Always watching, always thinking. But thinking will not save you when real warriors come to kill you." Tae-Jin looked straight ahead. "Yes, sir." "Yes, sir," Vextar mocked. "Is that all you can say? Where is your pride, your anger? Are humans too weak even for proper emotions?" Something in the general's tone made Ji Woo shift slightly. It was barely noticeable, just a small movement to his left. But it was enough to put him partially behind Tae-Jin. Vextar noticed immediately. His 4 eyes narrowed. "What is this?" he said. "Is the little human trying to protect his friend? How touching, how stupid." Vextar moved closer to Ji Woo, but Tae-Jin did not step aside. He remained exactly where he was, which meant the general had to go around him or through him. "Move," Vextar ordered, but Tae-Jin did not move. Not because he was being defiant. Not because he was trying to challenge the general. He simply did not see a reason to move when he was already in the correct position for inspection. But Vextar saw it differently. "I said move," Vextar shouted. Spit flew from his mouth as he leaned down toward Tae-Jin. "Sir, I am in the proper position for inspection," Tae-Jin said calmly. The room went completely silent. Every cadet, human and alien alike, held their breath. No one spoke to General Vextar that way. No one questioned his orders. Vextar's face darkened to almost black. His 4 arms trembled with rage. "Insubordination," he said quietly. "Direct defiance of a superior officer." "Sir, I was not." Tae-Jin began. The blow came without warning. Vextar's primary right arm swung in a wide arc, his massive fist aimed at Tae-Jin's head. It was the kind of strike that could shatter a Vorthic's skull. Against a soft human, it should have been instantly fatal. The sound of impact echoed through the dormitory like a gunshot. Tae-Jin's head snapped to the side. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. But he did not fall. He did not cry out. He did not even step backwards. Instead, he slowly turned his head back to face the general. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. Then he looked directly into Vextar's 4 eyes. "Sir," Teijin said in the same calm voice he had used before, "was that supposed to hurt?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Every cadet in the room stared in shock. Vextar himself seemed frozen, his fist still raised from the blow. "What did you say?" Vextar whispered. Tae-Jin did not repeat himself. He did not need to. Everyone had heard him clearly. "Impossible," Vextar muttered. "You should be dead." That blow would have killed any human. But as he stared at Teijin, something began to change in the general's expression. Confusion replaced anger. Then something else crept in. Something that looked almost like fear, because Teijin was not acting like prey anymore. His posture had not changed. He still stood, at attention with his hands at his sides. But something was different. Something in his eyes, in the way he held his head, in the invisible energy that seemed to radiate from his small human body. Vextar had spent his entire life around warriors. He knew how to read body language, how to spot weakness and strength. And what he saw in Teijin now made his blood run cold. The human was not afraid. He was not in pain. He was not backing down or begging for mercy. He was measuring distances. Tae-Jin's dark eyes moved almost imperceptibly, taking in the general's stance, the position of his 4 arms, the weak points where his natural armor had gaps. It was happening so fast that most observers would have missed it entirely. But Vextar was a predator. He recognized the look of another predator sizing up its prey. "Please," Vextar said, and the word came out as barely a whisper. I did. Not mean ... but it was too late. Something ancient and terrible had awakened behind Tae-Jin's calm exterior. Something that had been sleeping through months of insults and abuse and humiliation. Something that remembered what humans really were. The general took a step backwards, then another. His 4 arms came up defensively, even though Tae-Jin had not moved a muscle. "Stay back," Vextar said, his voice cracking. "That is an order." But Tae-Jin was no longer listening to orders. He was listening to something much older and much more dangerous than military protocol. He was listening to the voice of the species that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a world that tried to kill everything that lived on it, the other. Cadets watched in stunned silence as their most feared instructor backed away from a human who had not even raised his hand. 3 seconds had passed since the general's fist had connected with Tae-Jin's face. 3 seconds, and everything had changed. The change in Tae-Jin was subtle but complete. To most observers, he looked exactly the same as before. Same height, same weight, same gray uniform. But to anyone who understood predators, everything was different. His breathing had not changed, but it had become deeper, more controlled. His hands still hung at his sides, but his fingers were no longer relaxed. His eyes still looked forward, but they were no longer simply watching. They were hunting. General Vextar felt it first. The Vorthik had evolved as apex predators on their homeworld. They understood the language of violence, written in posture and breath, and the tiny movements that announced deadly intent. What Vextar saw in the human cadet triggered every survival instinct his species possessed. "This is not possible," Vextar said, his voice shaking. "Humans are weak. Your planet has no dangerous predators. You evolved from plant eaters." Tae-Jin tilted his head slightly. It was such a small movement that some cadets missed it entirely. But Vextar saw it, and his 4 arms came up defensively. "Sir," Tae-Jin said quietly, respectfully, "you are wrong about my species." The words were perfectly polite. The tone was calm and respectful. But something underneath the politeness made every alien in the room take an involuntary step backward. Earth does have predators, Taejin continued. We are them. Ji Woo and Sora had not moved from their positions, but their expressions had changed too. They were no longer trying to look invisible. They were watching the general with the same calculating look as their friend, the Vorthik. Instructor Commander Nixal had been silent during the confrontation, but now he stepped forward. General, he said carefully, perhaps we should stay back. Vexstar snapped without taking his eyes off Taejin. Do not get near the human. Other cadets began to whisper among themselves. The Zentari clicked nervously. The Corvin dimmed their natural glow and floated higher, ready to flee if necessary. Taejin had still not moved from his position at attention, but the air around him seemed to have changed. It felt heavier somehow, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Brakes, General, Taejin said. May I explain something about human evolution? Vexstar did not answer. He was too busy trying to figure out how a species he had dismissed as harmless could suddenly feel so dangerous. Humans did not evolve on an easy world, Taejin said. His voice remained calm, almost conversational. Earth has gravity almost. Twice as strong as this station. The atmosphere contains oxygen, which is poisonous to most galactic species. The weather includes storms that can level cities, temperatures that can freeze or boil water, and radiation from our sun that causes cancer. Some of the alien cadets were nodding. They had learned about Earth in xenobiology classes, but only as scientific facts. They had never connected those facts to the humans standing in front of them. But the environment was not the worst thing about Earth, Taejin continued. The worst thing was the other humans. The room grew quieter. Even the whispers stopped. For over 10,000 years, humans fought each other constantly. We developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans. We studied anatomy to learn exactly where to strike for maximum damage. We practiced warfare like other species practice art. Vexstar's breathing had become labored. Sweat beaded on his armored skin. Every human child learns to fight, Taejin said. Not for sport, for survival. We learn to recognize threats, to calculate odds, to strike without warning when necessary. It is not taught in schools. It is taught by parents who learned it from their parents, going back thousands of generations. The General tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sound. And then, Taejin said, we learned to control it. This was the part that terrified Vexstar the most. A berserker could be understood, predicted, countered. But Taejin was not a berserker. He was something much more dangerous, a predator with perfect self-control. Sir, Taejin said, when you struck me, you expected me to fall down, or cry, or run away, but humans do not run from threats. We evaluate them. Taejin's eyes moved again, just slightly. But in those tiny movements, Vexstar could see the human calculating striking distances, vulnerable points, angles of attack. Have evaluated you, sir, Taejin said. The words were still polite, still respectful, but they carried the weight of a death sentence. Around the room, other cadets began to understand what they were witnessing. The quiet humans who got picked on every day, who struggled with physical training, who seemed weak compared to everyone else, were not weak at all. They were just being polite. A Centauri cadet named Clix suddenly spoke up. Wait, she said, her antenna twitching nervously. If humans are predators, why do they seem so harmless? Sora answered without taking her eyes off the general. Because we choose to be. Your species conquered your entire planet, Ji Woo added. Every environment, every continent, every other species. Then you ran out of things to conquer, so you started conquering space. We did not join the Galactic Coalition because we needed protection, Sora said. We joined because we were lonely. The implications of this statement rippled through the room. Every species in the coalition had joined for mutual defense, trade benefits, or technological advancement. Only humans had joined simply because they wanted friends. Lonely predators, whispered a Corving cadet. Apex predators who wanted company. Vextar finally found his voice. This is impossible. Your military records show constant defeats. Your species is always fighting losing wars. Taejin smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. It was not a pleasant expression. Sir, he said, we were fighting each other. When humans fight humans, someone always loses. But when humans fight anyone else, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The general's forearms were trembling now. He had spent his career bullying species he thought were weaker than his own. But he had never faced anything like this. Taejin had not raised his voice, had not made a single threatening gesture, had not even stepped out of position. And yet Vextar was more terrified than he had ever been in his life, because he finally understood what he was looking at. Not a weak alien cadet who needed to be broken and trained. Not a primitive species that had stumbled into galactic civilization by accident. He was looking at something that had evolved specifically to kill things like him. Please, Vextar whispered again. The word came out cracked and desperate. I apologize for striking you. It was ... inappropriate. Taejin considered this for a long moment. The entire room held its breath. Apology accepted, sir, Taejin said finally, but he still had not moved from his ready position, and his eyes still held the cold calculation of a predator deciding whether or not to make a kill. The awakening was complete. The mask of harmless weakness had fallen away, and what stood beneath it was something the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity, finally being honest about what it really was. The silence stretched for another heartbeat. Then Taejin moved. It was not the wild charge of an angry animal or the desperate flailing of someone pushed too far. It was the fluid, economical movement of someone who had been trained from childhood. To end threats quickly and efficiently, Taejin stepped forward with his left foot, his body shifting into a stance that looked casual, but placed his weight perfectly for maximum power transfer. His right hand came up in what appeared to be a simple gesture, but Vextar's predator instincts screamed warnings. The general tried to block with his upper left arm, but Taejin was not aiming where Vextar expected. Instead of targeting the armored torso or head, the human strike went low and to the side, hitting a nerve cluster just below Vextar's secondary shoulder joint. Vorthic's entire left side went numb instantly. His two left arms dropped uselessly to his sides. Impossible, Vextar gasped. How did you know about that pressure point? Taejin did not answer. He was already moving again, his left hand coming up to catch Vextar's defensive strike from his upper right arm. Instead of trying to stop the blow with force, Taejin redirected it, using the general's own momentum to spin him slightly off balance. The human's right elbow swept up in a precise arc, striking another nerve cluster at the base of Vextar's neck. The general's vision blurred, and his legs wobbled. All of this happened in less than 3 seconds. The watching cadets stood frozen in shock. They had seen combat training, sparring matches, even real fights between different species. But this was something else entirely. This was not a fight at all. This was a lesson in anatomy being taught with violence. Vextar tried to retreat, his remaining functional arms waving defensively. But Taejin followed with the relentless precision of a surgeon. Every strike targeted specific points that the human had somehow identified, despite never fighting a Vorthic before. How could he know exactly where to hit? How could he move so confidently in the Academy's light gravity when all the human cadets struggled with physical training? The answer became clear as the demonstration continued. Tae-jin was not struggling with the light gravity at all. He had been holding back, moving slowly and carefully to avoid revealing his true capabilities. Under Earth's crushing gravity, his body had developed strength and speed that seemed supernatural in the station's gentle environment. "Stop," Vextar pleaded as Tae-jin's next strike targeted the joint where his lower right arm connected to his torso. "Please, I yield." But Tae-jin was not listening to words anymore. He was operating on a deeper level, following instincts that had been honed by millions of years of evolution on a world where mercy was often fatal. His next strike was a simple palm thrust to Vextar's solar plexus. The general's natural armor was thick enough to stop most weapons, but Tae-jin was not trying to break through it. Instead, his strike transferred force through the armor to the soft organs beneath. Vextar doubled over, gasping for air. His remaining functional arm clutched at his chest as he struggled to breathe. "How?" he wheezed. "Your species has no military training. You barely passed the academy entrance exams." Tae-jin finally spoke, his voice still calm and controlled. "Sir, every human receives military training. We call it childhood." The watching cadets began to understand. Human children played games that were actually combat simulations. They wrestled with friends and siblings, learning leverage and balance. They studied anatomy in school, learning where every organ was located and how the body could be damaged. What other species considered play or education, humans considered basic survival skills. Every human child learns to fight multiple opponents. Sora added helpfully. Siblings, bullies, anyone who threatens them. We learn to end fights quickly because prolonged conflict wastes energy. We also learn anatomy from many different species, Ji-woo said. Human doctors study aliens to understand how to heal them. Human soldiers study the same information to understand how to stop them. Vextar was on his knees now, still struggling to breathe normally. His forearms hung at his sides, temporarily useless due to the precise nerve strikes. He looked up at Tae-jin with something approaching awe. "You could have killed me," he whispered. Tae-jin nodded. "Yes, sir, multiple times." "Why did you not?" "Because killing you would serve no purpose," Tae-jin replied. "Dead enemies cannot learn from their mistakes." This casual discussion of murder, delivered in the same polite tone as a weather report, sent chills through every alien in the room. The human was not boasting or threatening. He was simply stating facts. Commander Nixao finally found his voice. "This changes nothing," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "One lucky victory does not make humans equal to real warriors." Tae-jin turned to look at him. The movement was slow and deliberate, like a predator selecting its next target. "Would you like a demonstration as well, sir?" Tae-jin asked politely. Nixao took several quick steps backward. "No, that will not be necessary." "Respectfully, sir, I think it is necessary," Sora said. She stepped forward to stand beside Tae-jin. "There seems to be some confusion about human capabilities that should be cleared up." Ji-woo moved to Tae-jin's other side. "For educational purposes," he added helpfully. The three humans stood together, and suddenly every alien in the room could see what they had missed before. The way humans moved together like a pack. The way they communicated with tiny glances and gestures. The way they positioned themselves to cover each other's blind spots. They were not three separate individuals. They were a hunting unit. "Please," Vextar said from the floor. "I understand now. I was wrong about your species." Tae-jin looked down at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Sir, you are not wrong about everything. Humans are small compared to most species. We do tire easily in combat. We are physically weaker than Vorthic warriors." Vextar looked confused. If humans were weaker, how had this one defeated him so easily? "But sir," Tae-jin continued, Physical strength is not the most important factor in combat. Speed matters, precision matters, knowledge matters, and most importantly, the willingness to do whatever is necessary to win matters. He knelt down beside the fallen general, his voice becoming even quieter. Humans do not fight fair, sir. We do not fight for honor or glory. We fight to survive. And we will use every advantage we can find, no matter how small or dirty or underhanded, to make sure we are the ones who go home alive. Vexstar stared up at him with growing horror. Your entire species thinks this way. Every single one of us, Taijin confirmed. It is how we survived long enough to reach the stars. The demonstration was over. General Vexstar slowly climbed to his feet, his motor functions gradually returning as the nerve strikes wore off. He looked around the silent dormitory, seeing his cadets with new eyes. The humans had not changed. They were still the same size, still wearing the same uniforms, still standing in the same positions they had occupied throughout the encounter. But now everyone could see them for what they really were. Apex predators who had been politely pretending to be harmless. The days following the incident brought changes that rippled through Nexus Prime Academy like waves from a dropped stone. General Vexstar did not file any disciplinary reports about the confrontation. He did not mention it in his official logs. When asked about the bruises on his neck and torso, he simply said he had suffered a training accident. But word spread anyway, the way important news always does in closed communities. Within hours, every cadet at the academy had heard some version of the story. A human had fought General Vexstar and won. The details varied with each telling, but the core fact remained the same. The humans were not what they seemed. Taijin, Ji-Woo, and So-Ra noticed the changes immediately. Other cadets no longer bumped into them in the corridors. The insults and jokes stopped. When humans entered the cafeteria, conversations became quieter. It was not fear, exactly. It was the careful respect that intelligent beings show to dangerous neighbors. They are treating us differently, Ji-Woo observed as they ate breakfast on the third day after the incident. Better or worse? So-Ra asked. Different, Taijin said, simply at the Vorthic table. Krog was notably silent. He ate his meal without looking toward the human section. His friends seemed subdued as well, their usual loud laughter replaced by quiet conversation. The Zentari cadets clicked nervously whenever humans passed their table. The Corvin dimmed their natural glow and floated a bit higher, unconsciously, putting distance between themselves and the ground-bound predators. But the most dramatic change came during combat training. Instructor Vexter had reorganized the entire program. Instead of species-segregated units, he now mixed humans into every training group. Where before human cadets had been relegated to support roles or easy assignments, they were now placed in leadership positions. Cadet Lee, Vexter said during the first mixed training session, you will lead Red Team in today's tactical exercise. Taijin accepted the assignment without comment, but the other species on his team looked uncertain. They had been taught that humans were weak leaders, suitable only for following orders from stronger species. The exercise was a standard urban combat simulation. Red Team had to secure a building while Blue Team defended it. It should have been straightforward, but Taijin approached it differently than previous team leaders. Instead of charging the building with overwhelming force, he spent the first 10 minutes studying the layout and questioning his team members about their individual capabilities. He asked the Zentari about their climbing abilities, the Corvin about their flight ceiling, the Vorthic about their armor thickness. Then he designed a plan that used each species' strengths while compensating for their weaknesses. Clicks, he said. To the Zentari, you take the north wall. Your natural camouflage will hide you until you are in position. Wait for my signal, then create a distraction. Nor, he told the Corvin, you provide overwatch from above. Your energy blasts can penetrate the building's walls, so you can support us from outside their defensive range. Gorth, he said to the Vorthik, you lead the frontal assault. Your armor will protect you from their initial response. But do not try to take the building alone. Just draw their attention. The plan worked perfectly. Blue Team, focused on stopping Gorth's obvious attack, missed Clix's infiltration entirely. By the time they realized what was happening, Red Team had secured the building from multiple directions simultaneously. Excellent tactics, Instructor Vexter announced when the exercise ended. Cadet Lee demonstrated superior strategic thinking and leadership skills. The other team members looked at Tae-Jin with new respect. He had not tried to prove human superiority or show off his own abilities. Instead, he had made each of them better at their individual strengths. This became the pattern in subsequent exercises. Human cadets did not dominate through physical prowess or intimidation. They led through intelligence, planning, and an uncanny ability to bring out the best in their teammates. How do they do it? Asked a Zentari cadet named Vex during a break. Between training sessions. Do what? Replied her partner, a Corvin named Zil. Make everyone work better together. I have never seen teams coordinate like this before. Zil's glow pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps it is because they studied warfare against their own species. They understand cooperation because they learn what happens without it. The observation was more accurate than either of them realized. Humans had spent millennia learning that individual strength meant nothing without group cohesion. The most successful human societies had been those that combined individual excellence with collective effort. Meanwhile, the Academy's instructors were having their own discussions about the human cadets. Their test scores have always been acceptable, said Instructor Yalmouth during a staff meeting. But their practical performance has improved dramatically. They were hiding their abilities, Commander Nixal said quietly, deliberately performing below their capabilities to avoid drawing. Attention. General Vexstar, who had remained silent through most of the meeting, finally spoke up. The question is why? Why would they handicap themselves? Perhaps, suggested Yalmouth, they were waiting to see how we would treat them before revealing their true nature. The implications of this statement settled over the room like a cold wind. If humans had been deliberately underperforming, what else had they been hiding? How much did the Coalition really know about Earth's newest members? Over the following weeks, the Academy's power structure continued to shift. Human cadets were no longer given the worst assignments or excluded from advanced training. Other species began seeking them out as training partners and study. Group leaders but the humans themselves seemed unchanged by their new status. They remained polite, helpful, and modest about their abilities. They did not lord their newfound respect over the aliens who had previously looked down on them. If anything, they seemed slightly sad about the whole situation. I liked it better when they thought we were harmless, Ji-Woo said one evening as the three friends sat in their usual corner of the dormitory. Why? Sora asked. Because then they were not afraid of us, Ji-Woo replied. Fear is not the same as respect. Tae-Jin nodded slowly. Back home, we joined the Coalition because we wanted to be part of something bigger. We wanted friends among the stars. And instead, we are just another predator species that others have to be careful around, Sora finished. The irony was not lost on them. Humans had hidden their true nature precisely to avoid this outcome. They had wanted to be accepted as equals, not feared as threats. But perhaps, Tae-Jin reflected, this was better than being dismissed as weaklings. Fear could grow into respect, given time and positive interactions. Contempt rarely evolved into anything better. Maybe, he said quietly, This is how it has to be. Maybe every species has to prove they belong before they can be accepted. And maybe, Sora added, being feared is the first step toward being understood. The next morning brought another routine inspection. But when General Vextar entered the dormitory, his demeanor was completely different. He still checked uniforms and bunks, still found minor faults to correct. But he no longer singled out human cadets for special abuse. When he reached Taejin's position, he paused for a moment. "Cadet Lee," he said formally. "Yes, sir? Your performance in recent training exercises has been exemplary. Keep up the good work." "Thank you, sir." Vextar moved on without further comment. But as he continued down the line, Taijin noticed something interesting. The general's posture was different now. More alert. More careful. He was no longer looking at human cadets as problems to be solved or weaknesses to be corrected. He was looking at them as potential threats to be respected. The transformation was complete. Humans at Nexus Prime Academy were no longer charity cases or evolutionary mistakes. They were recognized for what they had always been: apex predators who had chosen to be civilized. Whether that recognition would lead to friendship or merely cautious coexistence remained to be seen, but it was a start. And for a species that had conquered an entire planet through patience and persistence, a start was all they needed. The galaxy had spent millions of years wondering if they were alone in the universe. They had never thought to ask if they were alone at the top of the food chain. Now they knew the answer to both questions. And it was the same answer. No, they were not alone. But perhaps, with time and understanding, that would not be such a terrible thing after all.